Hello, friends. Now we are back, and we go on with English speakers. Now we have the happiness and the honor to present our dear friend, Dr. PhD in psychology, Amandeep from India. Hello, my friend. Hello, greetings from Brazil. I'm very happy to see you here.
Thank you
And
so much. Thank you.
we're going to have a presentation from the other side of the world in this World Suicide Prevention Day. Thank you so much for your presence, for your partnership. And now I pass the floor to you, with you the word, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adib. It's an honor to be on this platform, and I really enjoy to talk to you every time. And I really appreciate your dedication towards this issue. I'm sorry, you can see a lot of darkness around my in the
No,
background.
that's fine.
There's
We
an
can see you
electricity
well.
issue
We
here.
can see you well.
Yeah. So there's an electricity issue here since morning, but then you never, you never lose the hope. So you can do with candles. And
Wow,
so,
this
yeah.
it's gonna be
Anyway,
so spiritual. Nice. We
so
have some light,
anyway,
candles to shine the way, the
yeah.
path.
So it's been raining since morning. So there was some problem with the electricity since morning. So anyway, they're working on it, and I didn't want to cancel it. So I said, okay, that's fine. So let's try something.
Thank you
So
so much.
anyway, thank you so much, and it's an honor to actually talk about suicide. And I've been working in this field for almost 7 years, and it has given me a lot. At the same time, it's given me a lot of it made me understand people from a different perspective. Everything. Today, I'm going to talk about suicide prevention in India, especially a culture which is very religiously very. It's a very different culture. When it comes to suicide prevention, and people are not very open about talking about suicide in India. Um, there were a lot of times when I've been to so many institutes, so many universities, so many centers, and they say, please don't talk about suicide. It will trigger people, and it will so people will commit suicide, after that. So I just in a country like that, it's been a very difficult for every mental health practitioner or every mental health person who's been doing the job. But still, we have to work and we have to do something with the community. And suicide prevention is something which is the rates of suicide are happening. It's increasing, especially in a state like Punjab, especially a state like Assam, Maharashtra, Telangana. There's so many, states in India which are suffering actually. And there are cultural reasons for it. There are cultural reasons for, cultural, sociological reasons, psychological reason, and it's a multitude of factors that actually leads to it. So if I talk about, statistics in India, a lot of people, they are suffering from suicide, and they are going through a lot on a daily basis. And these are the cases which are reported, because in India, that's the problem where people do not report cases because there's a stigma attached to it. I have worked with families where if there's a suicide happened, they will not go to police, they will not report it, because thinking that nobody will ever get married in the family, nobody will have a contact with the family, or the family will be abandoned. So in that case, it's very difficult, and these are the cases which are underreported. I come from a state, from Punjab, and if I tell you there's an increase of 10, almost 10 to 8% of suicide, which is 20 to 19 to 20 20 20 at least. It's a very big number. if we talk about it, and these and most of the suicide happened among farmers. They don't have any psychological, they don't have any psychiatric disorders. Usually people, this is just a community population, because of certain things they are not able to do it. And farming community in India, it's one of the most strongest community in India, which is considered. I come from a land of farmers, and it's been it's saddening to see how people are taking their lives, and there's so many reasons for it. And that's one of the reasons why it could be. When we were doing research in India, when we were doing research in India, there were a couple of factors that we have identified at that point of time. So there were a couple of factors that we have identified. We have when we were working with people, when we were working with farming population or the community population, what we have come across, there were political insecurities. There were 7 Ds that we have identified. One of the Ds was drugs. Drugs are very common, especially addicted to alcohol, opium, cocaine, so many drugs that people are and people are taking their lives. That's because of that. These are the 7 Ds that we have come across, based on our research. Second is debt. Debt is also one of the common factors among people, who's taken debt from banks, who has taken, and they are not able to pay back, and how they take lives. And it's not that they are taking loan for any purposeful loan. And the majority of the loans which are taken, majority of the debt is taken for to marry to marry the daughter, or maybe to marry the son, or sending the son to abroad, and then they are not able to pay that back, and which is another thing. Another thing which is very common in terms of the other D, the third D that we talk about here, is that the diseases that people are suffering from. We come across so many villages in Punjab where we've seen that the village is named as cancer village, because majority of the people in the village, they are suffering for they are suffering from so many what do you call the diseases, arthritis, AIDS, paralysis, cancers, heart, lung, kidney failure. This is one of the common thing also in India, which is one of the things which is taking. Another thing is dishonor. Indians are very into when it comes to talking about their pride, when it comes to talking about their self-esteem, when it comes to talking about how they present themselves in the society. They're very particular about that. One of the things that we have seen is that because of the dishonor, because of the blame, criticism, and harassment, sometimes people take lives, because of that as well. So this is another factor which has come across in India when it comes to that. Another thing is natural death, for example, any murder, any accident. That's also one of the factors that leads to suicide as well. And the depression, the psychological factor could be, for example, depression, stress, loneliness, at the same time, anxiety, the perceived burdensomeness, thwarted belongingness, That's also one of the factors that people feel that they don't belong anywhere. They feel that they're burdened on other people, And also there's a factor of social isolation, how, genetic abuse, death of a loved one. These could be number of factors that leads to that as well. And the last, but also one of the important factor is where disputes, among families, how marital dispute, how land dispute, how property disputes, how there is a political insecurity that also leads to people take their own lives, and people also kind of it becomes very risky for them. So these are the 7 Ds that we have identified, that sums up what are the factors that leads to suicides in India. And based on our own research, when we were working with farmers, these are the 7 Ds, 7D model that we have identified. And these are the people who are suffering on daily basis. And just imagine, there are cases which are not reported; they are underreported in India. So that's something which is something that to be considered at. So what we can do, how to prevent suicide, and because what we realized when we were working with people, with farmers, with the community, sometimes the intervention which are very Western, they do not work with the the local cultural people. Sometimes it's very difficult for them to identify, to kind of to make at least a cultural relevance. So I with this lecture, if I'm open to people from abroad or people from outside India, one of the things I really want to highlight is the cultural relevance of therapies, the cultural relevance of therapies and counseling. which is very, very important. Apparently, there are so many interventions which are not very culturally relevant, which sometimes become very incompatible with the culture, incompatible with the background people are coming from, So that's something that we really wanna, which can be workable, and how we can prevent suicide as well, But so far, we've tried what are the factors that we can do and how we can actually prevent suicide. We've tried doing that. Um, so how we can actually, how we can actually prevent suicide? There are a couple of things that we can actually prevent suicide. One of the thing that we can actually do is, one of the things that we can do, multiple things that we can do in terms of it. First starts from sensitization. We have a saying in Punjabi, in our own language, "Karoge gal milega hal." If you don't talk about it, you never get a solution. It's just like that. When you don't talk about these things, when you don't normalize these things, especially about suicide, about these things, then it will be difficult to even prevent it. So by creating, Adil, can you please move to the next slide? Yeah. So if I talk about the first thing, the previous slide, Yeah. So the first thing starts from the how do we create, how do we, we can actually, how can we, create a this awareness programs and training programs, which can work with people, which can work with different population, And one of the things that awareness, by creating awareness program, by creating things, that actually helps a lot, and that actually will, there will be a huge impact in terms of that. When people are aware, when people are about aware about the symptoms, they are aware about the signs, we can prevent suicide as well. So by creating awareness program, by sensitizing people about suicide, that can be one of the intervention which can be done in terms of preventing suicide in a country like India. Another thing is gatekeeper training in education, community, and occupational settings. Nowadays, people are they are so you don't have to become a psychologist. You don't need to have any degree to have that. You can be a watcher. You can be a gatekeeper, where you can understand some signs and some sort of knowledge about suicide, and then helping the person to take the help. That will also help in that case. So gatekeeper training in institutes, communities, education institutions, and occupational settings will definitely help people. Another one is the psychological first aid. WHO has talked about how the physical first aid can be very important, and how it is, it has helped people in the same time. In the same time, we can actually do psychological first aid training for the people who can provide psychological first aid to the people who are in crisis. It's another form of gatekeeper training. It's a similar, very similar to gatekeeper training in a way, that when people are in crisis, how we can actually provide that psychological ointment, when they're going through crisis. This is what the psychological first aid talks about. Another thing is that we can do, and we can actually do resilience and emotional building trainings, where people, most of the people who are, let's just say, who are suicidal, when they're not able to control their emotions, when they're not able to, resiliency can also act as one of the buffer in terms of that. One of the buffer in terms of one of the protective factor which can act against suicide. So by doing resilience training and emotional building training, it can be very helpful in terms of that. Another thing which I started, conversation in today's conversation, the culturally adapted therapies, for suicidality. There are not so many therapies which are culturally relevant to so many people. I in my PhD I used DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which was very which I tried to use it and with the culture specification. But what I realized after doing a research in that, I felt there were some gaps because of the cultural irrelevance. Some of the people, they were not able to understand because of the lack of lack of cultural relevance to that, lack of cultural adaptability. That's where I felt. So having a having a therapies which are very cultural based and very tailor based therapies, that can also help in terms of preventing suicide as well. I'll tell you a very interesting case. We have developed this therapy called six thinking pagdi skills. So I am a Sardar. I'm a Sikh guy. I'm sure in the picture you have seen me wearing a turban. There's a one cloth that I'm wearing, and which is called turban, which is called pagdi. And for a person who is a Sikh, for the person who comes from Punjab, turban is a very big culturally relevant thing, So we made six thinking pagdis, six thinking turbans, where people have, like it's like a metaphorical hats. It's like a metaphorical cap on your head. If you take it off and you take it on, how it will help you to solve problems, how it will help you to kind of, get through crisis in time. So this is one of the things that we talk about is we tried doing that. It worked like a charm with the population, because they were able to find it relevant. And for a person who is a Sikh or a person who is a Sardar or a Sikh guy or a Sikh person, for them turban has a biggest role. I'll tell you a very interesting case. I worked with the dementia and Alzheimer patients, for some time, and they would never forget people coming from Punjab. They will forget how to eat, but they will never forget to how to tie a turban. That motor skill they never forget. So this is one of the things that was something that we realized, that having a cultural based therapies can also prevent suicide, and it can also prevent so many things. Another thing is having a national suicide prevention strategies. That is also very, very important in terms of preventing suicide. So government needs to, at the same time, government needs to kind of, put forth so many therapies. Government needs to kind of, come forward to talk about, how, suicide, strategies can be helpful. And government has to take doing policy making in terms of, how they can do that. So not suicide, I mean, the suicidal prevention strategies, national suicidal prevention strategies can be taken more seriously with policy making and everything. Another thing is suicide prevention therapies. We don't have more of therapies which only caters to suicide prevention. A lot of therapies are borrowed from other, for example, CBT, REBT. They work with the specifically, but there are very few therapies which work with suicide. For example, DBT is one of the therapies which work with very well with suicidal ideation behaviors. So that can be one of the, if we can work with create more therapies and come with more intervention, culturally based intervention, I think that would be that would something I would really propagate. Another thing is peer support volunteerism. By acting, by creating peer support, that can also work like a charm in that case. For example, by building a resilience, by building a PSVs, around the places. We done when we were doing this project, when we were working on farmers, we had created a system for people who were going through, who were suffering from suicidal thoughts. So we've taken into consideration the temples, the churches, people who go to churches. We can train those people as well. And create a peer support volunteerism there as well. How they can give intervene that point of time. They don't have to counsel, they don't have to, but at least referring a person to a psychologist or a mental health professional, that will also an intervention, one of the intervention that we do. So by acting, by creating peer support volunteerism, I think that can be we can prevent suicide, in that case as well. So these are the things that when it comes to these are the interventions that we can actually come up with when it comes to preventing suicide in India or any indigenous communities or any community who's indigenous in nature. We can come up with certain intervention policies, intervention making that will help other people at the same time. So that's what I think if I'm able to talk about that in few minutes, I think that would be success of today's 5 minutes. So this is what I just wanted to bring a light upon, and this is what I wanted to talk about. Now I can we can open the, if there's any questions or if anybody wants to ask me anything, they can do ask me anything. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Dear Dr. Amandeep, for those who don't know, we have met firstly in North Ireland and the International Congress for Suicide Prevention. And from that moment, and now we are friends, and I admire your work, Dr. Amandeep. I admire your strong will to do things, So it is the first time in my life I have seen a light candle speech, That was wonderful, spiritual. And I hope we can be, in person in Brazil, Dr. Amandeep. We are working on that. We'd like to have many speakers who presented today in an international congress here in Brazil. And I hope you are one of those speakers so that you have the chance to know Brazil, to visit Brazil, and to share more knowledge, with more time, with your huge experience in mental health and suicide prevention. We send to you the best energy we can, and the best vibration, and wish we can be together, very soon.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Gracias.
You're welcome.
Take care. Thank you.